Hey, how you doing? Hope it's all okay. Episode 223, the Notcast. As usual, subscribe, please. Watch if you like. 31st of July, 2022. Today, I am talking about the third major release and the second album by the Nine Inch Nails, released in 1994. This is The Downward Spiral, which had no lasting effects upon me whatsoever. Absolutely none. I've turned out fine, a well-adjusted, grown adult human, and with no lasting scars at all. Absolutely none. No, all good. So this is a really strange period of history to be a Nine Inch Nails fan. So it was released. The Downward Spiral was released on 8th of March 1994. So at that point, Nirvana had pretty much been and gone already. So the band was still huge. Kurt Cobain was still alive, although the band were clearly significantly troubled. By the time this album had come out, the band had already played their last ever show. And I think Kurt had, overdosed in a hotel in Rome the week that it was released. So grunge is dead, and yet somehow this album kind of came out and took a lot of the same kind of theories and themes, and without necessarily meaning to. What you'll find is an album that's made completely different and outside of everything else, somehow kind of aligns with the direction of popular culture at the time. And this album was absolutely huge. It's no doubt sold millions of copies. I don't know how many copies it sold. I know it sold at least 3 because I have at least 3 copies of it. But as an album, it was an album that seemed to exist both outside of time and utterly speaking to the time in which it was made at the very same moment. In the much the same way that Nevermind, Nirvana's Nevermind, of course, kind of seemed to just align completely with the direction that culture wanted to go in. The Downward Spiral suddenly was a record that became absolutely huge. And I'll be blunt, I don't know why. It's really bloody good. In fact, it's a brilliant record, but I don't know why it became absolutely huge. Actually, I have a theory as to why it became absolutely huge. But I think that is because, actually, following on from the Pretty Hate Machine and the Broken album, the release of the Downward Spiral on the 8th of March 1994. This is the very first copy of it that I bought, by the way. So I bought this on around 20th ish of March 1994 from the Woolworths in Cotteridge in Birmingham. Now, as this is the original edition, I'd like to thank PDO of Preston for skimping on their disc lacquers, and therefore the layer that actually contains the music slowly starting to oxidize and peel away. But because it came in this special sleeve, which was the same size as a CD single, Woolies, because it's just a record, right? They looked at it and went, it's a CD single. They put this one out for £2.99. And nobody bought it. And so it then, the week after, because it wasn't in the charts, they looked at the top 40 charts and went, we can't find anything we can't find The Downward Spiral by the Nine Inch Nails on the top 40. They then discounted it to £1.99. And on the Monday morning, I went into the Woolies wondering, well, what's been discounted from there? And lo and behold, the Nine Inch Nails album that had been out for a week and a half was £1.99 instead of about £14.99. Considering how much money the industry took off me over the years and how much profit companies have made, I had no compunction about buying it, not pointing out the error, and having the Nine Inch Nails album that I otherwise couldn't afford to buy. So, in full transparency, I was a student. I was living off about £200 a month. I was really strapped financially. It was very difficult for me to the point where I really was an expert at making every penny stretch as far as it possibly could. And of course, we still have to be. But I bought this, and otherwise, it would have been months after it came out before I would have been able to afford it. And I make no mistake about it, I absolutely loved Nine Inch Nails at this point. They were one of my favourite bands of all time. Certainly the band that, obviously, if you've seen the episode about Pretty Hate Machine, you will know, incredibly important to me, Pretty Hate Machine being a friend at a time when I felt like I had no friends after I'd had my heart broken as an 18-year-old. The Downward Spiral came out 2.5 years later, and this band was still incredibly important to me. My life had changed completely in the time between Pretty Hate Machine and the Downward Spiral. So when I listened to the Downward Spiral, I was like, I thought that maybe I'd moved into a different part of my life than perhaps this record was. And it's a fantastic album, but the lyrical themes that this album is grappling with and arm wrestling were not ones that were on my mind at the time when the record came out. The second thing that I will say is not long after this, Marilyn Manson became very, very famous indeed. And I think a lot of people think of Marilyn Manson as kind of being a clown, when Nine Inch Nails being serious and mature artists. I have a theory about that, which is that Marilyn Manson, if you strip away all of the artifice that comes around the songs, so the armbands, the outfits, the lyrics, the production, all that. If you take all of that away, actually at the heart of it, what you don't have with Marilyn Manson is fantastic songs. Songs that are designed to elicit a kind of almost like a girls kind of approach, or kind of like, oh, he's using something that looks like a swastika, ooh, edgy. Whereas with Nine Inch Nails, you stripped all of that away, and there was still, an underlying talent for melody, for lyrics that made sense, and songs that were about emotions, as opposed to songs that were designed to elicit some kind of shock jock approach. The concept that we have for the downward spiral, and this is where Trent described it as, it was about the idea of someone who reduces and shreds everything around him to a potential nothingness. So things like career, religion, relationships, belief, and then kind of like really simplifies life to its bare core essences, and then makes decisions around, is this who I want to be? What am I going to be? What am I what are my drivers? Those are the things. And it starts off with Mr. Self-Destruct, named after a soft cell song. Anyone that tells you otherwise is, of course, clearly lying through his ears. The track Mr. Self-Destruct opens with a sample, a manipulated sample from George Lucas's THX1138. It's the sound of pretty much the image that's actually on the back of the box cover of the Blu-ray release. Which is one of the characters being assaulted by three guards with prods, widely regarded as a very important scene within the film. And then that's manipulated and changed. And then the song itself, Mr. Self-Destruct, comes in. Lyrically, it's about somebody that's kind of working with and trying to understand their subconscious, their drivers, the thing that makes them do the thing that they do. And I was thinking about this earlier, which is, you think about when people talk about gateway drugs, trauma is a gateway drug, and everything that comes out from that, like, for example, pleasure, sex, drugs, drink, addictions, all those type of things are results of traumatic experiences, and trying to block out those traumatic experiences. In Mr. Self-Destruct, the lyric is kind of going, well, what is it that compels people to do the things that they do? So, for example, the opening kind of few lines are, I am the voice inside your head and I control you. I am the lover in your bed and I control you. I am the sex that you provide and I control you. I am the hate that you try to hide and I control you. I am the needle in your vein and I control you. I am the high that you can't sustain and I control you. And these are all kind of lyrics where it's basically going about, these are the things that control human beings, whether they're conscious of it or not. For example, when human beings say things like, I am hungry, what they're actually saying is, or more correctly, I need a pint, or I need a drink or something, or I need some food. What they're actually telling you is, I'm thirsty, I am hungry, I am tired. And they're already jumping to the conclusion of what the solution is going to be around that. So I am the needle that is in your vein and I control you. It's then going, right, so these are the things that control human beings. You think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is and there's a lot of psychology speak in Mr. Self-Destruct, and by extension inside the downward spiral as well, is these are all things which compel and control and force people to take actions and follow certain standards of behavior that they may not necessarily even know exist. And this is where the things around career, religion, relationships, belief, these are the things which lyrically in the album Trent is trying to slowly strip away in the downward spiral. It's going, what is it that makes people do the things that they do? What is the thing that compels them? The power of Christ compels you, etc., to do certain things. And it is fabulous song. I don't think I've ever seen them play it live actually, because I didn't see them on the Downward Spiral tour. As you probably gathered from my earlier statements about not being able to afford the CD, I certainly couldn't afford to go and see the band play live. And here is, the vinyl edition, just to shake it up a little, so you've got a slightly different thing to look at whilst I talk about the record. Second track on the album is Piggy. Now, the album was recorded in a studio in New Orleans, and it was also recorded in a studio which I think is in Hollywood. The studio in Hollywood is the one where I think Charles Manson murdered Sharon Tate, I think, and wrote Piggy on the wall. But the thing is, when they made the decision that they were going to go and record there, they didn't know the history of that until afterwards. And kind of like looking at the contract, and it went, you are aware that there's like, actually, no, I'm not aware that that's what happened there. So having a track called Piggy on the album is a coincidence, although I suspect it also takes its name from the Beatles song Piggies, which I listened to earlier on. I got gifted a complete set of Beatles vinyl a few months ago, and I'm slowly making my way through all of those. What we have in the track Piggy, for the first time, by the way, is the first of the recurring motifs that occur in the album. So lyrically, there's concepts around control and compulsion, and some of the lyrics which turn up in Now I Am Nothing as well also appear all through all of the songs in this album. But also what we've got is also repeated musical motifs. So there's like a 5-note motif that you have during Closer. There's a variation of it that's in the Downward Spiral itself. A variation of that appears on this track Piggy. I think it also appears somewhere else on the record. So there's like a 5-note kind of motif, almost like a classical movie soundtrack theme that you've got. And when that motif appears, then what you think is actually the album is dealing with a certain set of themes, concepts, and ideas, in much the same way that a Stanley Kubrick film embodies certain physical items, such as, for example, a red telephone. With themes, they always appear at certain times when certain things are ongoing. This motif appears in the album multiple times. According to rumour, on the track Closer, the version of it that's on the track Closer is actually a Roxy Music piano or guitar part that's filtered, played backwards, and slowed down to 64% or something. I saw a YouTube video of it which was quite convincing. But of course, as you know from watching this, is that not everything on YouTube is 100% factual. So that's kind of where we are with that. So Piggy is, I think, the second track on the album, played live an awful lot. I've definitely seen them play it several times. And it has a kind of like a drum break at the end. Now, originally, the drum break that's at the end of Piggy was going to be re-recorded by Stephen Perkins of Jane's Addiction and Porno for Pyros. And Trent Reznor laid down on the studio drum kit a fairly basic kind of drum breakdown, more as a kind of like a placeholder, like a temp track in a movie soundtrack. But it decided not to re-record it and kept it. So you've got some drumming from Trent there on Piggy. And track 3 is Heresy, a song which has rarely been played live by the band. At least it was played live on a few dates in 1994. I think it came back in 2007. It appears again relatively recently, but it's not been played vastly often. And I think Heresy is one of the very best Nine Inch Nails tracks. I wish they'd play it at every show. It's brilliant, like this pounding, thumping beat, which kind of rolls through the track unstoppably. And it's got a lyric about God is dead and no one cares, and if there is a hell, then I will see you there. And it's got like a paranoia around it. So there's also like an element inside the Heresy track which ties in with the concept of religious control, oppression, the moral guardianship, and saying, oh, God won't approve, etc. But then also going, well, God is dead. Now, also at the time, this is less than 10 years after the moral panic that sat alongside AIDS, the concept of sex being death, AIDS being a moral judgment that had been passed down on God for doing unchristian things like having sex with people of the same gender as you. And then, of course, going, well, what proof is there that there is a God? It's a heavy thing, the album, and it just once it grabs hold of your throat, it doesn't really let go. So let's go for first single release from the album, track 4 on the LP, the March of the Pigs. Here is the 7-inch single, which is numbered and single-sided, and here is the 10-inch. Not correctly, the 9-inch single, of course, because of who else but 9 Inch Nails are going to have 9-inch singles? Well, of course, 9 Inch Nails are. So there's Halo 7, which is March of the Pigs, backed with a track called The Violent Fluid. There's an etching on the B-side. Go and have a look at my etchings, lovely people. There it is. The etching is of the downward spiral image of a series of kind of concentric, almost scales there on the 7-inch, which is numbered. This one is number 2183, One Careful Male Owner. So I'm the only person that's ever owned this, in the same way that I'm also the only person that's ever owned this copy of the 9-inch single of March of the Pigs, which is a 4-tracker. Again, this is numbered 1161, and this has 4 songs on it, effectively being almost like a remix EP. So it's got the March of the Pigs, the LP version, it's got a track called All the Pigs, all lined up. It's got the B-side of Violent Fluid, and it's got a remix of an album track called Reptile, and the remix is called Underneath the Skin. Now, the March of the Pigs is one of the very strangest of the 9 Inch Nails songs. I can't say I'm a huge fan of it, but I think it's often very, very good. So March of the Pigs has audio samples in it. One of the audio samples comes from the William Friedkin movie, Sorcerer. Another one comes from a sequel to a William Friedkin movie, Exorcist 2, The Heretic, the truly very bad indeed film, which features Richard Burton during his most alcoholic of years. And March of the Pigs is a really strange track because it varies between 4/4 time and 29/8. So the synth on it, by the way, runs at 29/8. The drums often work at 4/4, especially on the All the Pigs All Lined Up variant, which is on the single, the remix. And this version of the track, All the Pigs All Lined Up, is almost a complete re-recording. It has different vocal track on it. It has a different set of guitar dubs on there. It's got different vocals. It's got lots of different mixing. It's got extra drum parts which are only on the single. And when the band play it live, they normally play a shortened version of All the Pigs All Lined Up as the bonus track that's on there. So let's go into the single of March of the Pigs very, very quickly. 2 CDs. This one here features the clean version, that is no naughty words, of March of the Pigs. All the Pigs All Lined Up. The track of Violent Fluid, and then a alternate mix of Big Man with a Gun. And the second CD features the LP version and 2 remixes of Reptile, one being called Underneath the Skin and the other one called Reptilian. And here is their standard CD single case that you'll have for part 2 of a 2 CD set. Track 5 on the album is, of course, the one that almost everybody knows, and the one that almost everybody wants the band to play live, apart from me, because I'm a snob. That is, of course, the track Closer, and that is the spine image which you will see etched onto the March of the Pigs single, by the way. Comes as 2 CDs, the single of Closer, backed with, I think, 5 remixes of Closer, and on the second CD, a remix of Heresy, a track called March of the Fuckheads, which is a version of March of the Pigs remixed by Adrian Sherwood, and the cover version of Soft Cell's Memorabilia, clearly making extremely bloody clear that the version of Mr. Self-Destruct does take its name from a Soft Cell track. Now, Closer is generally regarded as one of the best 9 Inch Nails songs. I'm going to be very contrary here. I don't particularly rate it highly. I think it's quite repetitive, it's quite circular, it doesn't really have a standard climax as such. You know, it's almost cynical in the way in which Closer is constructed. It's got a sampled drum sound from Grace Jones's cover version of Iggy Pop's Nightclubbing. It's got reverse guitar part from Roxy Music, the track being called Take a Chance with Me. It's got repeated keyboard melodies that are used inside the chorus of Heresy and also at the end of the Downward Spiral title track itself. It's got repeated lyrics, so it's got Nothing Can Stop Me Now, which is a key part of the lyric to Closer, which is also in the track Piggy and Ruiner. And also there's elements of lyrics repeated in Big Man with a Gun and I Do Not Want This. It's a perfectly cromulent 9 Inch Nails song, but it's kind of like, you know, when you listen to Oasis doing Wonderwall, or when you listen to Depeche Mode doing Everything Counts, is you kind of go, yeah, that song is designed to be the hit. You know, sometimes when you listen to a track, first time you hear it, even if nobody else hears it, and you go, that's going to be one that they're going to be playing at all their shows between now and the end of time, whenever that might be. That's not to say that Closer's a bad track. It isn't. It's really bloody good. But it felt not necessarily sincere. It felt calculated, almost like someone's going, I'm going to do a parody of what a Nine Inch Nails track is. I'm going to do one that says I'm going to fuck you like an animal. And the other thing around it is that when people think about it lyrically, it's not just a song to gyrate to in a club. That lyric about, I want to fuck you like an animal, it kind of was almost saying, well, actually, I want to strip away things like human meaning from interaction. I want to reduce, simplify things to their very basic core essence. And I'd be very happy if they don't play it live again, because there's got so many other great songs that are better than Closer. Of course, if I'd only ever seen Nine Inch Nails once, I've seen them about 7 or 8 times. If I'd only ever seen them once and they don't play Closer, I'd be like, oh, not fair. But I am lucky enough to have seen them approximately 8 times, I think, during the course of my life. And that's not because that's all the chances I've got. They've certainly played London at least 8 times, and I haven't seen them play 8 times, because at a certain point when I saw Nine Inch Nails, the last time I saw Nine Inch Nails was 2009, and I felt like I've squeezed every bit of juice out of this band now. There's nothing more that I can feel out of it. And also that was when they clearly announced they were on their Wave Goodbye tour, and I felt like I've got to say goodbye to the band. And sometimes when people go, actually, I'm splitting up, I'm leaving, I'm going, okay, that's fine. You're closing the door, so am I. It's kind of like if you're, when you were much younger, let's say you're 18 and you go out with somebody and they dump you, and then 3 weeks later they change their mind, and you come back together with them, and then 4 weeks later they dump you, and there comes a certain point you go, do you know what, screw this, I'm fed up now. You said that we're through. I'm not being, picked up and dropped down. And I can think of other bands that have split and come back multiple times, and there comes a certain point where every time that you do it, a certain amount of fans just go, actually, I'm done, guys. Stop dangling me about. I'm through. And so there you have it. So yeah, Closer, not my favourite song. However, one of the remixes of Closer by Coil is on the soundtrack to the David Fincher movie Seven. I don't know which version it is at the moment, but also, by the way, there is an incredible remix which is not on the remix album. The Closer to God mix of Closer is just brilliant. And I just wish that sometimes Nine Inch Nails play the Closer to God mix live, and it's just mind-blowingly good. Just it takes the song and then it takes in a completely different direction, changes the BPMs, adds new guitar parts, changes the lyrics around a little bit. So, for example, there are different lyrics on the Closer to God remix, so it's a re-recording of the track. It's just fascinating to hear the direction that the song could have gone into, but ultimately didn't. So we're on track 6 now. Track 6 is Ruiner. Now Ruiner is one of Trent's least favourite songs on the album, and I'll be blunt, I don't quite know why, because I think Ruiner is really bloody good. I will be really blunt about it though. Ruiner does feel like about 3 songs in one, and that is because it is about 3 songs in one. So each of the 3 parts was written separately. If you write songs, by the way, you don't necessarily always think, right, I've got a verse, I've got a chorus, I've got a bridge, and they don't come easy. Sometimes you write a bridge, sometimes you write a chorus, sometimes you write a verse. And you put them together in different configurations until you find the one that absolutely works. And Ruiner is the song that was probably made out of the most other songs that there were. So that, take a verse out of one song which wasn't necessarily, the rest of it wasn't used, take the chorus out of one song that wasn't necessarily used, take the bridge out of another. So it's almost like a Franken-song made of parts, but somehow it works as a complete whole. Now the remix has, and there's some remixes of it, have some completely different versions, tracks, lyrics, dubs, extra bits in it, but as a song itself, Ruiner is I think it's really good. Now recently I took all the multi-tracks from the 5.1 version of Downward Spiral. Hello, I'm the 5.1 version, and then you isolated the tracks out, and then I created an alternate version of the whole of the album that runs for about 2 hours. I've posted it up on Mixcloud, and I'll post a link to it down there in the comments. But it's there's a 12-minute version of Ruiner that I've taken that actually, when you listen to because I overlaid various approaches, and I said, right, so if I take the rhythm part from one part of the song and then I put the vocals from a different part of the song, are they going to fit? How's that going to change the song? And the answer is yes, It still fits, it still works. It's completely different and at the same point utterly familiar and absolutely the same. So Ruiner is in my opinion, an absolutely great track. We also have, by the way, on this album, track 6 is The Becoming, which is the last song on side 2 of your vinyl LP edition of The Downward Spiral. And I think this has got Mike Garson on it, actually. It really sounds like it has got Mike Garson playing Widdly Woo piano on it. And if it hasn't, it certainly sounds like it does. But I can't guarantee that that's absolutely 100% definitively the case. I know Mike Garson, who, by the way, is what was David Bowie's pianist, has played on a number of other tracks of Nine Inch Nails over the time. But not necessarily this one. But no, The Becoming it's not my favourite song. It feels a little bit constructed. So this is where I kind of talk about the lyrical kind of obsessions of the album, The Downward Spiral, because to me the reason why The Downward Spiral is not my favourite Nine Inch Nails album is because lyrically the whole album is basically obsessed with suicide. When you're 17, 18, 19, there's not very much of a future. The world and life is really, really difficult. Being alive is really hard. It's really difficult. The financial elements of it, the injustice elements of it, all of the parts of it. Life is really bloody hard when you're 17 or 18. When this album came out, I was 20 and my life had moved on a little bit from that. So when I was listening to the whole of the album, and basically, if you're miserable and you want to kill yourself, this is the album to listen to, because it internalizes and turns the anger inwards. Whereas something like Pantera, to you, Phil Anselmo and your scab metalers, for trying to resurrect the name of a dead band in order to plump up your bank account, you white power saluting scumbucket. Oh, sorry, don't know where that came from, and I'm back in the room. So the bit where you've got something like Pantera is that stuff is externalizing the anger around the injustices of the situation that you might be in. The Downward Spiral most definitely internalizes that anger, and it goes, "What can I do to me?" So if you can't change the world, which is externalizing the anger, what can I do to change me? And sometimes the most appealing prospect is to reduce yourself and take yourself out of the equation. And so if you could argue, oh yeah, the Downward Spiral is very cynically aimed at the most miserable, suicidal people ever. But as Rob Halford from Judas Priest said, what kind of band would be stupid enough to want to kill its own fans? And of course, that's not what Nine Inch Nails wanted to do, which is good because they didn't succeed. Although the album, the whole of the Downward Spiral, is a concept album that really rotates around the theory of, or the execution of self-neutralization, taking oneself out of the equation and resetting it so that perhaps things feel a little bit different. So we go over to track 8, which is I Do Not Want This. I think this is, I Do Not Want This is a great song. And again, when I was listening to the 5.1 mixes of the album, brilliant song here. One of the things that nobody ever really gives Trent Reznor enough credit for is the layering. So if you listen to just the multi-tracks and you hear just the ambient noises, the little bits of song that aren't a song, and you hear them in the track and you kind of go, this is really dense, interesting, fascinating, just sculpting sound in the same way that Florian Schneider in Kraftwerk would work on voice and speech synthesis and textures of sound as opposed to songs. That type of thing. Do Not Want This is a great kind of exploration of that. It's got Stephen Perkins on drums, it's got loops, it's got piano structure. I mean, the lyrics, you kind of could go, are the lyrics to I Do Not Want This kind of almost like a parody of what Nine Inch Nails are meant to sound like? The bit where he goes, I do not want this, don't you tell me how I feel. I stay inside my bed, I have lived so many lives all in my head. Don't tell me that you care, there really isn't anything, is there? Now, if you were going to feed all the Nine Inch Nails songs into a machine, some AI, and get it to write a Nine Inch Nails song, and by the way, there's a brilliant YouTube channel where someone feeds like AC/DC lyrics in, and then you come up with an AI version of an AC/DC song. This is the kind of lyrics that your Nine Inch Nails song would come up with. But yeah, there you are. And then you've got Big Man with a Gun, which has the lyric, I'm a big man. Yes, I am. I have a big gun. I've got me a big old dick and I like to have some fun. Now, in one respect, a damning indictment of the shallowness of gun culture in America. I can't believe that we're still talking about the Second fucking Amendment or whatever it is, and guns and muskets and the right to carry submachine guns when you go and buy your bloody hot dogs. Crazy stuff. It's a piss take of rap tracks. So you think about things like NWA, Ice Cube, some of the perhaps the more stupid ones where people are going, well, you know, you said a thing about me, so I'm going to say a thing about you, then I'm going to shoot you as I drive down the street. Aren't I really hard and clever and big? You know, it's a piss take of all those kind of brain dead, knuckle dragging, violence driven rap tracks where what really, really matters is being a respected man and having a gun and being able to shoot people. It's meant to be ridiculous. It's meant to be stupid. It's meant to be. It's not even smart in a stupid way. Some of these songs, whereas this one is mocking that in much the same way as Closer is probably a parody of those kind of sexy time songs, which sometimes you got on things like Janet Jackson and all that type of stuff. Um, Now, the other thing about this, by the way, is Big Man with a Gun, the 5.1 mix, has a completely different set of sounds in it, by the way. So it's not the same song, it's a different version of the song. Only the most avidly trained spottery nerds like me, hello, I'm a nerd, will notice that. But it's there and it's different. And then we come to track 10, A Warm Place, which, by the way, A Warm Place has the same chords as Bowie's Crystal Japan. And there is, I always think about this song when I think about the funeral of my friend Andy, which took place 2.5 months ago. The song that was played at the end was A Warm Place. Andy was an atheist, and he believed that there was no heaven above us, only sky. And he was cremated, and so he was going to a warm place indeed, which fit with his dark sense of humour and the fact that he was not necessarily fully respectful of everything, but yeah, matched up with him. Man, I can't believe I'm not going to see that guy again. I mean, I probably will, but it's going to be a long time. There was also, by the way, a remix of A Warm Place featuring vocals by Stella Salil, who is or was a Chicago-based artist, I believe, and it was prepared for the film soundtrack for Stigmata in 1999. Trent Reznor recorded the vocals and remixed it, but ultimately it wasn't used. So there we have it. Finally, we go to track 11, which is Eraser, which has some incredible remixes of Eraser, by the way. And I know I'm kind of skipping around a little bit, but there was a remix album further down the spiral, which was released both in international editions and American editions with slightly different track listings. The international edition of it has the polite mix of Eraser on, I believe. Oh, no. I think the polite mix is on here, the American edition, which is, in my opinion, the definitive version of the song. But it's just a great little song, Eraser. And it kind of builds. Now, when I was talking earlier about layering and texturing in the song, the Eraser is a fine example of texturing inside a track because it kind of fades. It's the first of the Nine Inch Nails tracks, which fades or kind of turns into an almost incomprehensible distortion as it's ending. This also happens on the Background World from the I think the Ad Violence EP. It also happens on the Closer to God remix, which is on here, and a number of other Nine Inch Nails tracks. It's the first time which I think we heard it on a Nine Inch Nails album. And it's very good. Okay, track 12, my least favourite Nine Inch Nails song of all time, apart from maybe just once. It is Reptile. I hate this song. I know it's very popular with the fans. People love it. Reptile is boring, it's tedious, it's slow, it's one-dimensional, it's circular, it's minimal to the point of banality. It's got a barely concealed misogynistic subtext in the lyric, and it's got this horrible kind of one-dimensional, simplistic to the point of boring kind of musical structure. I hate that song. It's just fucking dull. It really, really is. Every band I like has one song that I hate because that song just isn't any good. And normally they play it live. So, for example, the Wonder Stuff's Ruby Horse, I'm not a fan of that song at all because it's circular, it's repetitive, and it doesn't go anywhere. And the original idea isn't particularly good to start with. Reptile is much the same. They played it when I saw them at Glastonbury. I was bored. They played it at Brixton Academy. I was bored. If someone said to me, "You can see Nine Inch Nails playing in your, in your local pub, but they play Reptile 20 times," I'd be like, "Nah, I don't think I'm going to do it. I just couldn't. I'd be bored. Let someone who would really, really appreciate it go to the show instead." I really would. So I hate it. The remixes, by the way, there's Reptilian, which is the mix that's on the March of the Pigs release, which is extended. It's got instrumental choruses, it's got different loops, it's basically got a completely different structure. And we've got Underneath the Skin, which is a kind of like an extended rhythmic based version of the song, which goes through all the weird and unusual sounds that he has in his repertoire of works. Now, what Reptile does do, and it also, by the way, Reptile is a song that also shows one of Nine Inch Nails' future tricks, which is a writing trick which Trent Reznor uses a lot, which is that you have two quiet instrumental breaks in the middle of the song which separate the main verse-chorus section. So you've got like a verse, a chorus, a quiet instrumental break, a verse, a chorus, a quiet instrumental break that's different, and then a third verse, a third chorus, and an instrumental chorus. And it's a song structure which you'll hear on things like Even Deeper as well. Very, very clever, but also do not like it. So sorry, can't have it. There you go. 2 songs to go now. The Downward Spiral, which samples Aliens, by the way. It samples Dead Ringers, the David Cronenberg film. It's okay. I mean, the thing is, at this point, the album's gone all in. It's fully committed to the concept of seeing somebody reduce and take out one of the elements of their life to the point of suicide. The Downward Spiral, much like the track on Therapist Suicide Pact You First, by the way, or Troublegum, I think, actually. I think, is it Hellbelly on Troublegum? Does the same type of thing. Is it effectively is a band playing a rock soundtrack to an imaginary suicide, and it doesn't work. It really doesn't. There's also then the last song is Hurt, the song obviously covered by Johnny Cash, which everyone now thinks was a Johnny Cash song that happened to be written by Trent Reznor. And Hurt is a song that really threw me when I first heard it, because I was not expecting this at all. There's a degree of maturity in the songwriting which is far, far beyond what you would necessarily expect of an album that's a concept album about suicide. And by the way, the structure of the Downward Spiral is very, very similar to Pink Floyd's The Wall album. Probably one of the reasons why it's so popular with teenagers, or was popular with perpetual teenagers, is bloody moody record. And frankly, having been a teenager once, they were bloody moody, and I was too when I was a teenager. But the single biggest influence that we've got on the album actually is David Bowie's Low album. The use of abrasive sound mixed with very, very relaxed, temperate instrumentals, such as those quiet parts in Reptile, A Warm Place, even some of the interludes that you've got on some of the other songs where everything kind of drops out for a minute. Her recycles a lyric which also appears on the track A Million, and All the Love in the World about being a million miles away. The sound of Her was created using an infinite reverb. So you think about U2's With or Without You. The Edge uses an infinite guitar, which is effectively you play a note once and then it stays until the point where you change it. Same kind of thing happens inside Her. It gives the song kind of almost otherworldly feel, where it doesn't necessarily feel like it belongs with anything that's going on around it. It's a great track. Very powerful. Again, played at Andy's funeral. Will not be able to hear it without thinking about Andy, but then I very rarely thought about Nine Inch Nails without thinking about him. We spent hundreds of hours going up and down the country in motorways going to see bands, and most of those bands starting with the letter N and ending sometimes in the word Inch Nails. That is the Downward Spiral, which sold probably a gazillion copies. The band went on tour, played a heck of a lot of live shows. Whilst on tour, Trent prepared the soundtrack to the film Natural Born Killers. He remixed the soundtrack album, produced it, and added a Nine Inch Nails track called Burn to it, which was finished after the LP sessions. They then carried on touring. They played a number of live shows, the most popular of which was at the Woodstock Festival in 1994. Here's a bootleg DVD. Here's the bootleg CD of it, broadcast on pay-per-view television. And if you want to think, what was it like to see Nine Inch Nails in 1994? Watch this and you will get it all. It's not representative of a standard Nine Inch Nails show. It's not even a particularly good Nine Inch Nails show from the time, because of the technical limitations that you had of playing a multi-artist set and being on about 1 o'clock in the morning. But the band really are playing very, very hard at this point. And the live band which Trent has put together, featuring Danny Lohner, James Woolley, Chris Renner on drums, who's the only member of Nine Inch Nails I haven't seen live, by the way, and Robin Fink, who also later went on to Guns N' Roses on guitar, play an absolutely stonking show. Really, really loved it. There's another bootleg CD, this one recorded at the Expo Hall in Tampa, Florida, which I picked up in a charity shop for couple of pounds. Pretty surprised when I saw that. It's probably an audience recording and sounds absolutely dog shit, but there you go. And then the band kind of closed off the period with 2 remix albums released on the 1st of June 1995. Further Down the Spiral. Further Down the Spiral is effectively the singles that never were compiled into remix albums, and I have to question the wiseness of having remix albums, really, because it was just a bunch of remixes as opposed to a compelling artistic statement. So this one, the US version, like both of them, open with the Nothing Can Stop Me Now mix of Piggy. The international version, this one here, has the Art of Self-Destruction Part 1, then the Art of Self-Destruction Part 3. This has the Art of Self-Destruction Part 2 on it. So really, to get the whole set of remixes, you need to put 2 of them together and then create a different set of mixes. This one has a remix. This one has a remix of Heresy that's not on this. This has a remix of, I think, Eraser on it, which isn't on anything else. And it also has a track called Erased Over and Out on there. So there's exclusive mixes on each of the versions of the albums. And Further Down the Spiral was not released on vinyl, by the way. So if you're a kind of person that absolutely has to have the vinyl edition, you will not get it there. But no, the band then did a joint headline tour with David Bowie, which ran through to the end of 1995. They came off the road. They prepared a concert VHS, which they decided not to release. And then they released the VHS Closure, which was a compilation of home camcorded footage from the tour, which I did have on VHS, but was obviously, with the death of VHS, has now been torrented by Trent, and he's just out there for free. So there you have it. 2004 saw the 10th anniversary edition of The Downward Spiral, and if you look at this, by the way, this is a double disc set. Disc 1 is a Super Audio CD featuring a stereo and 5.1 surround sound mix of the album, and then disc 2 features B-sides and extra tracks. So on here you will have the first album appearance of Dead Souls from the Crow soundtrack. You will also have a Violent Fluid, the quiet mix of Her, Closer to God, All the Pigs All Lined Up, the cover version of Memorabilia, and then 3 previously unreleased demos being Ruiner, Liar, and Heresy. Liar, by the way, is an alternate version of Reptile. So, a quick note on the artwork, by the way. If you look at these are both photographs of a physical piece of artwork, and the idea with the artwork was this was around layers that were created, and so therefore, it was a 3D artwork that was presented in a 2D cover. So it was about looking at the surface and the interior of it, so you can see the multiple layers that there are around there, the sense of stripping things away. It was inspired by something called Requiem of the Croppies by Seamus Heaney, which is about where people were murdered as they were walking to battle in a trap, but the people had seeds in their pockets, and the seeds grew and filled the field where they had died during the battle. Now, the artwork, by the way, on the 2004 version of it, it's a photograph of exactly the same item, but if you look carefully, you will see that it is in fact not the same, because it is photographed 10 years apart. So you can see that some of the items have moved, the colouring has got darker, the item has decayed over time. And then if you look at the rear side of it again, also, I mean, this is a photograph of exactly the same thing, but 10 years later, so you can kind of see the progression of time in the darkness in the artwork. So there we have it. And again, here's the inside of the 2004 version, the Super Audio CD, and generally it's really, really good. So this period was really very, very busy, indeed. I didn't see a live show because I didn't have the money, but I was consuming at a fierce rate everything else that was going in it. Two final things. One was in 1996. Trent did the music for the video game by ID called Quake. If you have a Quake CD, track 1 is a now unplayable computer game. Tracks 2 to 11 are the soundtrack, ambient music. You'll hear a lot more of this type of stuff from Trent over the years. And then in, I think, 2014, we got the release of an EP of previously unreleased mixes from the period called Uncoiled, and then a vinyl and CD edition which was called Recoiled, and these were alternate versions of the remixes by Coil of the tracks Gave Up, Closer, The Downward Spiral and Eraser. These are really great. Give them a listen. There's a lot of different coloured vinyl versions of Recoiled. If you can, stick with the black version, because the black vinyl version is the one that has the least amount of artifacts and bugs on it. The picture disc and the brown vinyl apparently are very loud, scratchy, and generally poorly manufactured. So that is the 9 Inch Nails, The Downward Spiral, and it's a really good album. I think I'm now able to listen to it and think about it as almost being like the soundtrack to a period of my life that at the time I wasn't particularly attracted to, because I wasn't enjoying parts of my life at the point when this came out. But it is a really good, strong, solid album. Sold an awful lot of copies, and I sold at least 3 of them to me. So there we go. Right, going to wrap up now. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll post links to the whole remix of the album which I've made down there, as well as live shows from the period. In the meantime, stay beautiful, take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you soon. Okay, adios amigos.